Hey all, welcome to Share Track. This is Raj here, and friends, today I'm going to talk to you about Illumina. Of course, I don't fancy myself to be a news agency, but this is as quickly as I could bring this news to you. And hopefully most of you have already seen the press releases. So this includes the news as well as my thoughts around Illumina. So let's get started. The EU regulators today fined Illumina a record 432 million euros, which is close to $476 million US, for closing its acquisition of cancer test developer Grail without first securing regulatory approval. This fine breaks the previous record because previously the highest such fines by EU for this category was $125 million, and that was imposed on a telecom company very recently in 2018. We all know how the Grail acquisition has cost more than 25 billion in value loss for Illumina and attracted the attention of Carl Icahn, who subsequently got one of his nominees elected to the Illumina board. We also know how Francis D'Souza had to resign from the board, and also the chairman of the board lost his election. So it's been a period of turmoil for Illumina, and the 476 million fine was anticipated and is sitting in the reserves with Illumina, and that indicates that even Illumina itself knew that the fine was serious and it was a real possibility. So if you look at the $25 to $30 billion loss in value, and then if you also look at this $476 million, it's a whole lot of money to waste for shareholders, from the shareholders' value. And naturally, someone had to pay for it, and Francis D'Souza and the chairman of the board did. The Illumina spokesperson said that they would appeal the fine. The EU authorities use the term gun-jumping to describe how they view Illumina approach this issue. They felt that Illumina strategically weighed up the risk of a gun-jumping fine against the risk of having to pay a high breakup fee to Grail if it failed to take over Grail. If you look at the termination clause filed by Illumina in SEC, in the original agreement, it required Illumina to pay Grail $300 million and if they did not take over Grail due to reasons other than those which were statutory. And the costs incurred towards the merger was also to be paid. And a further stipulation incurs another $300 million, taking the total to a potential $600 million plus of compensation to Grail. And when you compare that to the EU fine is still less, even though EU has tried to put the maximum fine out there. The reason why I think EU fines are for Illumina is steep is because I think they want to make an example of Illumina to prevent so-called gun jumping by companies which are proposing merger, where there's a clause for termination by one of the parties, by the taking over party, where a huge compensation has to be paid to the company that is being taken over. In those instances, CEOs may tend to do the same calculation and assume that the gun jumping fee would be much less, gun jumping fine would be much less than the actual termination fine by not taking over the target company. So what I would have liked to hear from Illumina spokesperson today was that they are willing to divest Grail at an opportune moment and would run it as a separate company till then, and in exchange request EU to drop the fine. But we did not hear that today. So I wonder what the end game for Illumina is. Will EU impose more fine for the next financial year? And how will Illumina share price react to that? Because the fine that EU has imposed right now is based on the annual turnover of Grail. So there's a good possibility that EU might come back with a second year of fine and continue the fines until Illumina decides to dispose of Grail. So that's my fear. And what do you guys think about this? Have you read the agreement? If any of you have a legal background, and if you can go to the SEC website and have a look at the original Illumina Grain acquisition agreement, let me know what you think about it, because I think that EU would like to make an example of Illumina, and it may come back with more steep fines going forward. I may be wrong, but that's my personal opinion. It's not financial advice, so please do your own due diligence before investing in Illumina. And curiously, today Illumina stock price has jumped more than 3%. It's a very smart jump compared to the tepid increases that we saw in the last 3 days. So I do not know what the market is calculating. My own projections are a bit bleak for Illumina with regard to potentially more EU fines going forward after this one is paid. So with that, friends, I'd like to bring this video to an end. I'll catch up with you again tomorrow. Bye for now.